gentlemen, in this corner, from the University of Colorado, 30 years in the ring, fighting for truth, justice, and the American way, Dan Caplis.
You're on the Dan Caplis Show. I'm Kristi Burton Brown in for Dan today. And you've been following all of the news about artificial intelligence, also known as AI, ChatGPT, all of these new technologies that are bursting on the scene and catching fire very, very quickly with a lot of people using them, people worried about them replacing American jobs. And also an issue of whether or not America can keep up to date with what China is developing with new technologies. Here in Colorado, we're lucky enough to have Congressman Ken Buck taking on AI and all the interesting laws and regulations surrounding it. Congressman Ken Buck joins us today. Welcome to the Dan Caplis Show, Congressman.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
Absolutely. Great to have you. And the number of issues I'd love to cover with you. But first of all, I find it very intriguing, your work on AI and artificial intelligence. I read in the news that the White House is proposing some sort of Bill of Rights with AI, and that you don't quite see eye to eye with how the White House is doing it. Not a shocker there. But what do you think the balance is between allowing innovation as Americans with AI, but making sure we're still competitive with China, and then any regulations?
Yeah, I think that there's always a tension between innovation and regulation, and we need to make sure that we don't over-regulate so that a country like China gets an advantage, not just in the business world, but more importantly, a national security advantage and military advantage. And so I think it's really important, crucial, that we don't over-regulate in this area. At the same time, we need to make sure that AI isn't used in ways that can harm particularly young people, but really everyone. Right. If some teenager is going online and searching for ways to commit suicide, we want to make sure that young person is directed to a suicide hotline or some other way of identifying help for that person. And obviously, drug dealing, human trafficking, other concerns have to be addressed. So there are some harms that we need to avoid, but not most importantly, but at the same time, make sure that we are promoting innovation.
Right, and not stifle it so that China gets ahead of us on the national security stage. Makes a lot of sense. And for anyone listening, if you've not read Congressman Buck's book, Crushed, where he talks about big tech and censorship, that is definitely a must-read. And it's great to see you branching out also into AI and artificial intelligence, definitely staying on top of all of the new technologies at the congressional level. Do you see a lot of bipartisan agreement being possible on AI?
Absolutely. In the main focus, I think there will be broad bipartisan support. We had Sam Altman come in to the House and speak at a dinner. Over 80 members attended and really asked insightful, intelligent, well-thought-through questions and explained their concerns in ways that went far beyond partisanship. Where the partisanship will come in is we have seen big tech use their platforms to censor primarily conservatives, but to censor voices in the public, and AI can certainly be used to do the same thing. And so the differences in how we approach censorship, the left calls it misinformation, disinformation, and we are concerned on the censorship side. So they want to ban certain speech, and we want to make sure that there are, if the speech doesn't lead to violence or direct harm to someone, we want to make sure that we have a free flow of speech in this country.
Absolutely. A very important right to defend. And speaking of other things that are not always quite bipartisan, spending. You've been a big voice on not raising the debt ceiling ever in the United States. And I know I've seen you all over TV talking about the spending deal that came out and your opposition to it. Do you want to address anything that's been happening with that since it passed?
Sure. I'm not opposed to increasing the debt ceiling. What I'm opposed to is continuing to go down this path of spending ourselves into oblivion, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Right.
At some point, we need to address the mandatory spending, the Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the various entitlements, and a lot of people don't feel they're entitlements, but rather something they're paid into for years. And so I understand that, but they are the main drivers of our future default as a country. But before we do that, politically, we need to assure the American people that we've cut every wasteful dime possible out of the federal budget, that we have eliminated programs that aren't federal programs and allowed the states to pick up those programs. But if we don't start showing discipline on the spending on agencies in the federal government, the discretionary spending, we are in no position to ask the American people to make sacrifices on the mandatory or entitlement side.
Absolutely. If the government's not willing to sacrifice a few of their dollars, absolutely right that the American people would not want to be asked to give up theirs. Talking now with Congressman Ken Buck from Colorado's 4th Congressional District. A number of big decisions coming out from the U.S. Supreme Court over the last couple of weeks. And I know you were talking on social media, at least, and probably several other places, about the affirmative action case in particular. And I know it's popular with the majority of Americans. I believe at least 65% of Americans actually agreed with the court and prefer admission to college to be based on merit instead of race. Why do you think that decision was a big moment in America?
I think affirmative action is really misplaced. It's one thing to say that somebody who comes from a family where neither parent received a college education should get some sort of assistance in getting into college and getting a college education. It's another thing to say we're going to divide this country by race. And so somebody who is black parents may have moved here from Africa 20 years ago, and both are doctors or both are professionals, and the young person has had every advantage in life. That person gets an advantage over a Asian student, for example, who is whose parents haven't gone to college, who's has struggled to get good grades, but has gotten better grades and will not be admitted. It is really a poorly thought through policy. Now, politically, it serves the ends of those folks who want to go into the inner city and get votes. But as a matter of policy, it is really doesn't meet the end goal of what some people are trying to achieve. If you want diversity, the way to achieve diversity in universities and colleges is to focus on education in the inner cities.
Absolutely.
The school, the teachers union controls that education system. It is a failed education system throughout this country in inner cities. And we have answers involving school choice and charter schools and parochial schools and private schools. And those options are under attack constantly, and homeschooling, frankly.
So true.
Those options are under attack constantly by the left and by the teachers unions, and that's the way to achieve true diversity in colleges and universities.
Yeah, 100%. Hit it at the ground level when these kids are being raised up in the education system. I think you're absolutely right. And Congressman Ken Buck, we have to take a break now, but so appreciate you coming on, sharing your new work on AI, your stand against bloated government spending, and great thoughts on education as well. So everyone read his book, Crushed, by Congressman Ken Buck, and thank you for joining us on the Dan Caplis Show.
Thank you, Kristi. Good to be with you.
Thank you. When we come back, we'll talk about new findings in the White House